Hey, Sandra.
Hey, Jamie.
What up, girl?
Man, no, the question is what's not.
The statues?
Well, yeah, that's what I was just going to say. That statue down. A couple of them are down, matter of fact.
Yeah, I drove into town the other day and because I get to work really, really early. I usually get here around 7 o'clock and start cleaning up and get everything ready for the clients. And I hadn't even checked my Facebook yet. And I'm like, wait a second, something's different. Because I had to get my Burger King because I'm fat, right? So, and I'm driving past and I was like, huh?
What?
Okay, that's gone.
What?
Get to market.
We had a
That's gone.
conversation and then now it's gone.
You mean change is starting to happen?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. We had a conversation and something happened. Imagine that.
Well, I try to, but sometimes it doesn't work.
But yeah, so that's what's not up. The statues are not up. But there's a whole lot going on. I mean, there's a lot going on. And the city of Wilmington going through what it's been going through with what's been going on in our world is a lot for us to take in. And then what it has done, I feel, is it's given a pair of glasses to those people that just didn't believe it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people just didn't believe these kinds of things went on. A lot of people in my community were labeled as the angry black woman or angry black man. We're just always mad about something. And so some of these things that are happening in our country is giving people a pair of glasses.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's needed.
Yeah. So, guys, we are live taping. So the YouTube version is not live, but the Facebook version is. So if you guys have any questions for us at all, feel free to hit us up.
Yeah,
we're going to be watching the feeds, and we'll talk to you. Oop, volume control. Hello, professional.
I thought I had that fixed.
I thought you had it fixed, too. Jesus. So, Sandra, for the people who do not know you, can you give us a little brief story on who you are and what you do?
I'm trying to keep it brief. But
you don't worry about it. We got a whole hour show.
I am a Wilmingtonian. My name is my legal name that when I do my taxes, it says Sandra McClammy. I was born and raised in Wilmington. Actually, my parents are from this side of town. They're from, my mother she touted being from the north side. I have cousins, Pollocks, all of them are from this side of town. My father is from Rocky Point, Pender County, of course. But I was raised on the east side of town. Went to public school here during a time where there was a lot of change. I never went to the same public school from first grade all the way through sixth grade. Yes.
You changed all the time?
Yes. From first grade, I went to Forest Hill. Second and third, I went to Winter Park. Fourth grade, I went to Riceville Beach Elementary. Mind you, I lived on the east side. I went to Riceville Beach Elementary for the fourth grade. And fifth and sixth, I went to Snipes.
So why all the changes?
Well, during that time when I was growing up, it was the time of the, late 70s, early 80s. That's when there was a lot of change. It was a lot of districting change during that time. So, and of course, I guess I'm telling my age now too, but it was a lot going on during that period of time, which I unfortunately didn't find out until I was a teenager. I started doing a lot of research and reading, like, why were things the way they were? Like, didn't even realize that first, second, and third grade, many of the schools that I had went to, which was Winter Park and Forest Hills, had only been integrated for just a few years. So I was like, wow, I didn't even know that I had went to the school that had only been just integrated. But we're talking about like in the 70s, even though, and then of course people asked the question and were like, okay, well, didn't, desegregation happen in the 60s? And I was like, didn't mean that everything was integrated immediately.
Yeah, change doesn't happen overnight.
Didn't happen overnight. So there were still so many schools that were segregated. So during that time when I was a kid, before I got into the public school systems, many of those were still that way. But then as I went through, my grades, it was just so much going on in Wilmington at that time. And then I finally settled down in middle and high, which was junior high. Back then it wasn't middle. It was junior high. But so I graduated from New Hanover High School, wanted to go to North Carolina State, got accepted. Had some family things happen. I decided to go to UNCW. That's a 4-letter word nowadays, but
literally 4 letters.
But decided to go to UNCW. Loved it. Did not want to go at first. Basically, it was just being a teenager and wanting to go out of town. Loved it. Loved my experience at UNCW so much so I went back and got a master's degree from there. My master's degree is in liberal studies. And as a young adult, I did a lot with working with the community. I was always really invested in working with the community. So I started in my 20s and 30s as far as being very active in the community. And was afforded the opportunity to be like in some really good seats. Vision 2020 happened in the 90s. A lot of people probably don't remember that, but there was a huge council called Vision 2020, and I was a big part of that and was able to write some what I call some new laws like transportation. I fought to get the city bus running later and on the weekends. There was also housing issues that we discussed for Vision 2020. And of course, I'm saying in the 90s because they were like, what did we want Wilmington to look like by 2020?
Yeah. Yeah, you went Jetsons on us.
Right. So it's like, okay, it's 2020. So, but a lot of that stuff that we discussed back then, we were able to do it. So there is hope and vision, in doing and being able to put things into motion. It can happen. So I was a part of that. I was part of New Hanover County, the Head Start association that was here. So I was a part of that for a long time and was appointed by the governor to represent New Hanover County. So did that for about 6 years and was able to rewrite the Roma Act, results-oriented management and accountability. Loved my time doing that. And again, I'm talking about 20s and 30s. This was when I was very young and was very active.
You were an Olivia Pope.
Yeah, man. I had my hands in everything. And so, and then of course, I worked in many different industries. Of course, finding myself, I worked at UNCW as a staff member. I was in the school system. And then of course, I decided to take my teaching up a level and I wanted to go to the college level. So, and then all in the midst of being a radio DJ too.
Yeah.
So I was doing all that stuff and being a radio DJ. This year will mark 25 years. Yeah. That I've been on Coast 97.3. So that's just a little snapshot. I left out a whole lot of stuff, but yeah.
Oh, no, we're going to circle back. So I first met you as Sandra, the Midday Miss.
Yes.
So tell me what's radio like? So I'm a rookie in a podcast. I've run tech side for a very big national podcast. They had 9.2 million listeners per month on the one show.
Wow.
And 1.8 on the other. But it's different being on the other side. So I'm still trying to run the tech for other people and run my own tech, but I also want to branch off. Mm-hmm. So what advice can you give to a rookie? Because I definitely need it.
Well, advice I give anybody about anything is reading and research. Reading and research. With anything. I tell everyone, stop and read. And we have the advantage now. We have the digital advantage. When I was in school, when you had to look something up, you had to look it up.
Or ask mama. She was Google.
Like, you had to look it up. When I say, or ask your mother. I mean, when I say look it up, I'm talking about, like, I'll throw out a word that people probably don't know. Card catalog. Uh-huh. I mean, you had to go to the library.
Dewey Decimal?
Yeah, okay. All right, man. You had to look stuff up. I mean, it was nothing like having something at your fingertips. You had to look it up. Now,
wait, did you ever get the encyclopedias from the the grocery store?
Of course, who didn't? And then you had the Britannica. Remember, you had the whole set, and then
no, we couldn't afford the whole set. We got the first couple. My mom didn't make payments anymore, so I got A through D, and after that, I was lost.
So all of your reports had to be anything that started with
Aardvark, Antarctica, Alaska. Yeah, I was good.
Oh my goodness.
Britannica.
Yes, Britannica, of course. But when we were in school, we had to look it up. Like, now you've got this stuff right at your fingertips. And so you have the advantage of being able to research. So the first thing I would tell you to do is to read and research. And we always have to start with, when you're looking at the radio business, I always like to look at what's not being done. What sets people apart from others. You all have a lot of people doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. But what sets you apart is what's not being done. For example, like Teen Summit, Big B and I did that for about 12 years. And I think what set us apart is that we sat down and we did research. It's the first thing that we did. We want to do this thing with teens. What are we going to do? So we was like, let's sit down and let's figure out what they need. And so we can tell them what we think they need, but we need to ask them. Has anybody ever asked the teens what the problem is? Or do we just get together, put a program together and say, you need to do this and you need to do that? Most teens are like, I don't even want to talk about that. That's not an issue right now. So you have to learn how to sit down and listen and research first. and find those gray areas. I think you would succeed in what's not being done.
Yeah.
So once you figure that out, you read and research, and then you land where you want to be, it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
You still got to research. I mean, like I said, 25 years I've been doing radio. I criticize myself every day.
Yeah.
Every day. You know, if I hear myself on the radio, I was like, why was I talking about that? Where was I going with that? You know? So I continue to read and research. I continue to look at the competition. I continue to look at constituents that are doing the same thing that I'm doing. And I continue to look for those gray areas, those things that are not being done, those things that are not being discussed.
Sure.
So that's what my advice would be to you.
Yeah, because I know there's 800,000 podcasts out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, I've learned, be true to yourself, be tenacious, and be consistent. People will not follow anything that's not consistent. Like your everything you guys have done at the radio station, you're always consistent and you do it in excellence. But you never overextend yourself.
Oh, well, until we changed our morning show.
Yeah.
Then we were inconsistent, and anyway, I don't want to get into that. But
well, we could talk about the prank calls, which I always hated, anyways. I'm more like, to me, the other one was kind of like high school humor. And my elevator goes up a little higher. So it's like when that show came on, I would turn out anyways. And I come back around 10 o'clock.
I'm telling you, it's the culture, man.
Yeah.
The Breakfast Club is culture. I mean,
that's where I got these mics from. I stole their idea. I saw that mic. I was like, I've been looking for that microphone stand that they have. I found something close. It was like $1,700, but I want it so bad because it looks so darn clean.
Yeah. So that's what Charlamagne and Angela and DJ Envy use. But they definitely, one thing I like about the Breakfast Club is it's like when you're listening, it's like, yeah, I'm glad you're talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to talk about that, but I just couldn't go there. And sometimes they're bold enough to actually go there and just go ahead and open the door and have the discussion. They have great interviews. It's for the culture.
Well, yeah, when you own your own platform, it's hard for anybody to stop you. So when you're working for somebody else, you kind of have to follow in their mandates. But I don't know why you don't have your own podcast. You and B should just do something off the cuff, or unless you got a contract that says you can't.
No.
But you guys should. I've heard you guys in private, and I'm like, let it happen. Just do it. You can do it here. I don't care. I have the equipment.
We've talked about it. But again, it's like, just like I said before, you know, with anything, even like I said, and I'll revert back to talking about Teen Summit, because it was one of the biggest projects that we worked on. And even when we did that, you know, people thought it was great. And it was like, oh my God, we've had conversations like, when are you going to bring it back? Why did you stop? And it was like, well, there was a shift. You know, you got to understand, we did it for like 10, 12 years. So there was a shift, and it didn't happen overnight. I mean, we had the conversation beginning back in 2004 about it. We didn't start it until 2006. And so in doing so, we were watching students graduate. You know, they're getting married now and having kids or whatever, and they're doing great. But it's our results. Those were the results that we wanted. And, you know, when they were in high school then, that's what we were telling them. We just want you to be great. We just want you to be great, you know, and then we see them now as adults and we're like, this is what we wanted. We just wanted you to be great. But that took, like I said, it took a lot of research. It took a lot, and it took a lot of doing some things that, you know, we had to step out there on the edge and do, because some people are like, oh my God, I can't believe y'all gonna let these kids do it. And I'm like, yeah, you just gotta, I mean, we have to learn from them. Yep. Can't constantly keep sitting here telling them what they need. We have to ask them what they need. Yeah. You might want to sit there and have a conversation with them about drugs. They may not be having a drug issue. Yeah. The issue that they may have is about self-esteem. So you're spending your time developing a whole program about drugs, and they're like, that's not our problem. Yeah. Because no one would sit down and ask the question. And
sounds like government to me.
Yeah, it does. And that's what our teens really loved, was the fact that they said people are actually asking, you know, they navigated towards, excuse me, Big B and myself because of that. They said nobody would ever ask them the question. Yeah. So they were like, wow. And it was really interesting when we started working with these youth. And we would have these candid conversations with them, and we would ask them stuff, and they would go, oh, you care?
Yeah.
You want to know? We're like, yeah, we really want to know. And what it did was it divested into myself as an educator too, because, you know, I teach as well. Mm-hmm. I teach at both colleges. And what it did then was it allowed me to see these students at the high school level and understand a little bit better what I was getting in the classroom. I don't even talk. Well, I mean,
Yeah, BB's in 11th grade. Well, getting ready to go into 12th. So I know how it's going. He tells me everything.
it's the conversation was brought up about that the other day when I was looking at the forum that they had for City of Wilmington, and I was able to be on the feed, and I actually put a comment in about that too. And what was said was, I was like, yes, I'm glad someone has said that, because you really need to talk to professors like myself who are at the college level right now, and we're receiving these students. I'm getting students, in my class that are coming from high school. And at the community college level, you'll also get students that come in that are young adults.
Mm-hmm.
So some are coming straight out of high school. Some of them didn't go to college immediately, and they're 25, 30. There's some that, worked somewhere for 15, 20 years, and now they're coming back for a second career. Mm-hmm. So I have a range.
Sure.
What is interesting, out of a class of 25 students, past maybe 4 or 5 years, I've been teaching a class called Southern Cultures, where I talk about how the South shaped the United States. And so clearly a lot that's discussed is about the civil rights movement, a lot of race issues, a lot of diversity. And one of the first questions I asked the first day is, how many people in the class know who Emmett Till is?
I don't.
I would stand there and students would be like, who is that?
Mm-hmm.
Or they would say, is that guy that's in that Kanye West song? Through the Wire.
Well, that was a remix anyways.
So Through the Wire, of course, Kanye West talks about how he got in a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, he uses the epithet and he says, had me looking like Emmett Till. Now, people are like, I don't even know who that is. Yeah. I'm like, you don't know who Emmett Till is? I'm like, what is going on? So what it did again, and I use the phrase, give me a pair of glasses and then also makes me go, what is going on in the public school system?
Yeah.
That we're not, and we already knew that a lot of history was not being taught in our public school system. Because when I had to think about it, I was like, I didn't learn about Emmett Till in public school either. It was something that I had to bump into or find out about. There's even stuff about my Wilmington community that I didn't know anything about, that I'm constantly learning about. Those conversations that I'm having with those students now, in addition to the history, also bleed into government, just like you said. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times in the classroom, I'm talking about something and I go, right, that's the senator's job.
Sure.
And they'll look at me like, what did they do? So we even I'm like, is there not civics being taught? Mm-hmm. Is civics not being taught anymore? Or is it just kind of mixed in with the history class? Like, we had a civics class.
Yeah.
Like a complete school year.
Baby didn't have it.
On civics.
Yeah.
It wasn't mixed in with the history class. So most of my students are coming not just from New Hanover County schools, they're coming from different schools. And they're like, nah, it was just kind of mixed in there.
Yeah. And
so, I'll ask even questions like, what are the 3 branches of government? You would pass out if I tell you what responses I get from students. 19, 20-year-olds are looking at me going, the president, the vice president, and the secretary of state, are those the 3 branches of government? I said, no, those are not. So, and then what this does, like I said, and it takes me back to what I was saying about Teen Summit, it's just basically kind of gives me an idea of where we are. Like, we have to understand why people are frustrated about voting, why people, and why our younger generation is frustrated about voting. And I was like, I thought it was an apathy. And I said, I think the bigger part of it is lack of knowing. Yeah. Like, I don't want to vote because I don't know what I'm voting for. Why do I think, they think the presidential election is the most important one. They don't come back 2 years later. And I'm like, those are the people you got to put in power. Yeah. Those are the ones you need to make sure that you're putting the people in power. That's legislative and judicial. The executive branch is going to take care of itself. And no, I'm not saying you shouldn't vote for that either, but you need to participate. You need to be participatory in all elections. All elections matter. Can I say all elections matter?
You can.
All elections matter.
Let me ask you a question then. Let's talk about local history.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how do you bring that into into a traditional education across the state.
Ooh,
So
that's a good one.
yeah, so could you do basically a semester on that and then have a test, and each region has its own test, and then because you have to still pass the state test, right?
Well, you do. And I'm glad you brought that up. And so basically what this goes back to, it goes back to then saying, well, the argument, just like you said, is that people are like, oh, well, that doesn't align with the state testing.
Sure.
So that's the reason why those things aren't taught in the classroom.
Well,
And so
forget the
then-
state test, but let's just get actually knowledge.
Right. My response is then, who on that committee? Who's on the committee?
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring that up is because that was one of the things I was a part of when I was a part of the Roma task force for community action. I was on a task force where we were looking at the laws for community action that had been written and hadn't been changed since 1985.
Mhm.
It was 2000
Yeah.
when we were looking at these.
Yeah, 15 years behind.
So it's like we're talking about results-oriented management and accountability. Oh my goodness, the word accountability on something that was written back in 1985. So my point is, if there are things that we're supposed to be doing that align with state guidelines, then we need to go there.
Sure.
And it's always been my argument about everything, even with the social unrest that we have. When they talk about arresting the officers that do things or whoever that does anything wrong. And I says we have to look at, when we look at the George Floyd case, you have to look at the officers, but you also need to look at the person who hired them.
Sure.
And we need to figure out what was being done inside. And then we need to go further and we need to find out, where is that officer being trained?
Sure.
Is there sensitivity training? There's like a rollout of questions that we need to answer. And then when you answer those questions, you need to then go and attack. So if it's all about the state, then we need to find out who is in charge of that committee, who sets those guidelines, and can we change that?
You think like I do, you go right to the foundation.
Right. You have to go to the foundation. So I'm like, we can't continue to still have these, like what I call rollouts of students that are pouring into my classroom to the tune of 25, sitting in my seats, and I have to stop and spend almost a month with something that they should have came with. They should have came with those tools. And I'm not talking about intricate details. I'm talking about someone like Emmett Till, who basically changed the whole ally situation of social unrest. It's when we got more allies, when we're talking about the civil rights movement. And you notice in 1965, when you look at pictures, you have more whites that were participating in protests at that time, because they're like, this kid came from Chicago, went down south. What in the world's going on? We need to go help. And so when you're looking at that situation and you're looking at students not knowing who the four girls are, I bring these topics up in my Southern Cultures class, and my students are like, what four girls?
Yeah.
The four girls from, I was like, I don't know about the four girls that got bombed in church. And no, never saw that. And we put this
Wilmington
information.
10, any of that. Yeah.
So when we're talking about history from other states, we're talking about stuff that happened here in Wilmington. And luckily I'm afforded the opportunity to be able to reflect and respond to that because of my age. I hate to say that, but because I've been around Wilmington, for a long time, so I saw these things happen. I've seen them evolve. I remember going to Belk with my mother, which was the library.
Okay.
The library.
This building was a library?
Yes.
This was the Peabody Library.
It was the Peabody
Library. I found
Library.
about that like a month after I moved in here.
You're 100% correct.
Someone came in here, was like, Jamie, this is a library?
This was
Like,
the Peabody
really?
Library. It was. And that's what I thought was really cool. I was like, oh, he's maintaining a piece of history in Wilmington. And, you had the public library now, which is why it looks that way. It was a department store, and it's really kind of nostalgic. I can walk into that store and I can stand into the exact spot that I got my first blue coat with the fur around it. I remember it like vividly. And I remember looking up at Mr. Belk, and Mr. Belk used to cater to my mother to help her be able to get things for people that really could not afford to purchase stuff right out. They would extend credit.
Okay.
And so, they would do stuff, it wasn't like layaway. I mean, you walk out with the coat. And so he would help, these women in our communities. So you have like your good coat. But then I had to go to Woolworth to get my socks and my barrettes. And the interesting thing, I vividly remember walking in Woolworth, which was across from the post office, and with my mother, and they had a counter over to the left. And you would smell the hot dogs, and you could see them making the sodas.
Yeah.
Not Coke, but ice cream sodas.
Yeah.
So, I know
You had a
people
soda
are like,
jerk.
Yeah, I know people are like, how old is Sandra? I'm up there.
Yeah, because our Woolworths, we didn't have food and stuff in it. It was basically
No,
like
this one had food.
Ours was like a Roses.
Ours had food. And I remember looking at my mother going, oh, I want a hot dog. And she would make these excuses like, oh, you wouldn't want one from here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that good. And what I learned later was we're talking about the 70s.
Yeah.
It wasn't really that. It was because we weren't really allowed to go to the counter. So we would go to like Tom's, where we were allowed to actually eat there. But my mother would make these excuses. As I was a kid, I wanted to do something. She would always tell me, you're not going to like that. You wouldn't like that. And so I was like, man, can you imagine being a kid in a store and you smell a hot dog, you can't eat it. Mm-hmm. So, these little pieces of history are things that I can share with students that I remember growing up as a kid. So you not only have things that happen in our country, but you also have a lot of history right here in Wilmington. Yeah. There's a lot of history, a lot of stuff that's stones unturned. And we have these historians here. And, I encourage my youth all the time. I'm like, go get them. Go get them before we lose them. They're getting older. So, get that information so that we could get it in a book, because a lot of times a lot of this stuff was happening when there was no record of it, or there was a record, but it's hard to find that record. So I'm telling my students now, be the record, go find out what that story was all about, and you be the person to publish that record. So, but yeah, our education system, I mean, it's always a topic.
When you went back on time on me, I remember going to the library in Valley City, North Dakota, and I grew up really poor, so we were on food stamps and all that stuff, and we would go about once in blue moon, and we would get these commodity boxes, and for whatever reason, all of a sudden, I just had a flashback of the 5-pound community cheese, or the cheese. I loved that stuff, but maybe I had bad taste buds as a kid, but I loved that stuff.
I have this mark on my finger right here from trying to cut a piece of cheese off of that box. I was like, every time I see my finger, I think about, it's like, oh, I remember when I was 9 years old and I was trying to cut a piece of that cheese. Man, you had to have a cheese cutter. If not, you were going to injure yourself like I did. But it's so much. It's so much. And I just want us as, a people to take the time to listen and read. Yeah. And it's one of the things that I heard, I forgot the gentleman that said this when I was looking at the city of Wilmington's Zoom call that they did earlier this week. And he was saying, as an ally, he said one of the most important things that he's learned is that he has to listen. Yeah. And I said, you're correct. Sure. And I said, even we have to listen, Right now, Black lives do matter, and we have to listen too. Sure. And the listening has to be on both sides. And the reason why I say that is because even people ask, I've gotten asked this question all the time. If you grew up in a Black neighborhood, why did you go to UNCW? And I said, well, I went to UNCW because it was at a time, during that time, late 80s, early 90s, I grew up in a neighborhood that was all Black. Mm-hmm. And when I say all Black, I mean completely. Everyone was African American. And at the time I went to public school, my high school, the higher percentage was African American. I mean, it was nothing to be in a classroom at Hanover back then and be mostly Black, And so I said, I just want to be around people that didn't look like me, one. Mm-hmm. Two, the reason why is because I wanted to hear what they thought about stuff. I'm like, I can't assume that this person feels this way about something because of who they are. Mm-hmm. I want to hear it.
Sure.
And I want to be able to then form the narrative and then inform the debate.
Yeah.
So a lot of times And I think back to being in some of my UNCW classes. There was nothing to be in a class of 45 people and being the only African American. And sometimes the topics that were brought up, I would just sit and listen. Yeah. I wanted to see what people that did not look like me responded.
That's kind of why I do the show.
I was floored. I was like, you really believe that?
Yeah.
Like, that's what you think?
Yeah.
And so it was an education for me. Yeah, it was my college, it was my education, but it was an education. So I would then leave and I would go out and I'm like, do you know that there are people out there that think, and of course this was an eye-awakening thing for me because again, like I said, I had mostly been around people that were African American. Yeah. And that was my reasoning for going to UNCW. My reasoning for going back and getting my master's degree in liberal studies is because I did want to study liberal studies, which is the study of, people are like, what is liberal studies? I like when people ask me that question, what's liberal studies? I was like, it's the study of the human condition. That's the short answer. So you get to pick from topics that you may even agree with and some you don't. Yeah. I mean, I'm not an atheist, but it's interesting to learn about it because, again, it's informing the debate. The worst thing I think a person can do is have an argument about something they don't know.
Yeah, no monodirectional thinking.
Right.
So so for what I said, like you said, you like to read, but what I would tell everybody, read from both points of view, and then form your opinion based off that. So absorb the information from both sides, try to see the truth in the middle, and then use your brain and actually do it.
Right. And it's almost like that's what debate teams do. I mean, you've got to look at it from both sides. And I teach, the other course that I teach is critical thinking. And in teaching that course, I always have to, warn my students. I was like, what you learn in my class, you got to prepare yourself for people to attack you. Because when you start asking, because critical thinking really teaches you how to ask questions. It's kind of just like what I said. When I observe something on the news and I see something happen, I look at what happened, but I want to know everything else. Yeah. So I want to ask a whole bunch of questions. So I want to know, who is that person that got killed? What's his name? Where's he from? Where is his family from? Where did he go to school? Who are his parents? Are his parents living? What kind of education did he have? Whatever. And so immediately when you start asking those questions, people go, why is that important? I'm like, I'm trying to inform.
Why didn't you become a spook?
I'm trying to inform the debate. I want to know how mad to be, pretty much is what it is. I want to know everything. Then I want to know.
Do you know what a spook is?
Huh?
Do you know what a spook is?
I think I know.
CIA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Field agent.
Okay. I was thinking, is he talking about being a spy?
Yeah, a little bit.
But I want to know all of that stuff. And then, like I said, when I was talking about the police officer, I want to know who that officer is. I want to know how long he's been on the police force. I want to know everything that's happened to that person while they were on the police force. What was their behavior? I want to know where they went to school. Where did you go to school to become a police officer? Are they training a whole bunch more officers like you? Are they sensitivity training? How many years were you in school before you became an officer? How long were you an officer before they gave you a gun, a badge, and a uniform? I want to know all those questions. And I also want to know who your family is. Where were you from? How long did you live there? And so people are like, why are these questions important? And again, like I said, it informs the debate.
It creates your baseline too.
It does.
Yeah.
And then what it does is it gives you a fuller picture. When you're asking those questions, you're not taking anyone's side.
Yeah.
I just want to know. I want to know all of it because the reason why I want to know is because I want to fix it.
Well, yeah, because you can graph your change. You can find out all the same information from a bunch of people, put everything into a chart, and then you're going to start noticing trends. And when you notice the trend, you can identify the trend, and then you can fight the trend.
Right. Because I want to fix it. What has happened, what continues to happen, and I said this also on the feed for the city of Wilmington, we have a habit of getting angry about a particular topic or a particular issue for a little while. And it dies down.
Yep.
And it goes away like a snowflake.
Yeah.
And then it happens again, and we get mad all over, and then we go get us a new poster, and we start a whole new protest. And it goes away again. And then it happens again. So the reason why I said those questions are important so that we can fix it, it needs to be fixed. If we didn't ask the questions and ask those tough questions, And if we didn't demand some sort of resolution, that statue would still be up.
It would.
That's the point that I'm trying to make when I said, see, when you continue to push the buttons, when you push those buttons, but when you're pushing them with the ammunition of education, then you can win. You
And
can't
tenacity.
You can't just, and I learned this the best from my boss from UNCW. She passed away earlier this year. Her name is Michelle Howard Tall. And she used to give me the best advice. And she used to always say, never go to a fight unarmed, right? She said, if you're going to go to a fight, you're going to be armed with something, even if you're fighting with your fists or if you have a weapon. She said, that's the same way that you should go into issues. You should arm yourself with education. She said, never go into a fight arguing for something without a possible solution. You can't just go and say, I think this is wrong. Because be prepared for the person to look at you and go, you're right. So what do you want to do? And you go, I don't know. So that's why you have to do the research. You have to say, okay, I think this is wrong and this is why, and this is how I think it needs to be fixed. Just like we just talked about with the education system. It's like if the state is making those guidelines, and we need to drill down to the bottom of that and go, how long has this been like this? Because this needs to change. Because we have an uninformed community. And you unfortunately have an uninformed young community.
Sure.
And you don't want your youth out there unarmed educationally. You don't want them out there fighting with passion without education. Passion is always very good, and that keeps the fight. But what it does sometimes is an only temporary fuel, just like the cookout.
Sure. But if you dumb down the education system, you're taking away the person's ammunition.
That's
So
right.
we have to arm our kids before they even go to school.
Correct.
Or after school, so they actually get the education that they really need, not what they're being fed.
Right. And we have to arm them before they go to the protests. Know everything that you're doing, whether it's legal, whether it's not. Understand what you're doing. Know what you're doing. Know the legal ramifications. So arm yourself. Actually come to the fight and be prepared, just like with the debate, knowing both sides of the issue. And typically you'll end up winning that way. But what we cannot continue to do is be mad for a minute.
Sure.
And continue to just, have these what I call temporary protests and wait for something else to happen. The fixing has to come in with, if maybe that officer is like I said, we ask these questions, where did they get trained? You go find out, okay, what's going on at this facility? How are you training these? Because is it going to be a whole bunch more people coming out of here like the person that killed George Floyd?
Yeah.
Do we have a whole bunch of y'all still? Does everybody in here, did everybody get trained that way?
Well, three more officers just left.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a start. We're starting to clean house because people are finally sick of it, and they realize we're not going to just talk about it. This is not going away. This is the time. And unfortunately, he became a martyr.
Yes, he did. And it was so unfortunate a life had to be lost, because there have been so many people before us that have been preparing us for this. And it's, when we look at our, I always like to say our wisdom, which is our elders in our community, they were the ones that were sitting there and they were going, I told you. I saw this coming. We saw this coming. Everything was done to prevent it, but unfortunately it had to take someone's life for us to have a pair of glasses and understand this is what we're talking about. And I've seen so many people, heard so many white people that were going, I just didn't know. They would just go, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't listening.
Sure.
Or I assumed that the conversation was, like I said, just angry. I mean, even I used to think about some of my elders. I used to always think they were angry. I'm like, why are you mad all the time? And I was like, the reason why is because y'all been arguing about this for 35, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's still the same.
If things don't change, you're going to get frustrated about it.
Correct. And so we have so much fixing to do. And unfortunately, with Wilmington, we see Wilmington being broken. Wilmington was broken before George Floyd. I saw so much of the things that were going on, seeing the things that are going on in our city. And then to have, you sprinkle a little social injustice and a little bit of coronavirus and murder hornets and everything else that's going on. What we got, the Sahara dust coming this weekend. I mean, it's like, oh,
Yeah,
geez,
but we're supposed to get some beautiful sunsets from that.
Yeah. I mean, just, you just keep, it's like making a pot of spaghetti.
Yeah.
We just keep adding stuff to it. And it's a bunch of like mixed up
Wait,
noodles
how much
in
stuff
the
do you
pot.
put in your spaghetti? I was thinking goulash.
No, I put quite a bit.
In your spaghetti?
Yeah.
Is it a spaghetti at that point?
Well, I put onions, like fresh onions, bell
Okay.
pepper,
Okay.
oregano,
Okay.
seasonings,
Yeah.
So it's like a different seasoning.
It's 10 o'clock. You said food. I got hungry.
So it's like, I mean, you look at it, we already had issues in Wilmington. We already did. And so then with this happening, and when, I'm going to be honest, when all of this first happened, I'm always saying, I'm going to be honest. I'm very transparent. I have nothing to hide. So anybody that's on this feed, if y'all want to ask me a question, I'm going to answer it. I don't have a problem.
Shout out to Tiffany Jones.
Hey, Tiff.
And
what
then
up?
Richard Danoff.
Okay. Shouts out to y'all.
Richard's part of the Nooner crew from the show they used to work on that had the 9.2 million. So they would come into this one of the chat rooms of one of the live shows at noon, and there'd be about 178 of the people in there at real time, just having side conversations that had nothing to do with the show. But it was funny. I loved hanging out with those guys.
Okay.
They cracked me up.
Well, thank you, Tiff. But I'm trying to think of the best way to say this.
I broke your concentration.
When all of this happened, and I hate to bring up Ski's murder because that happened. And when I say it knocked the wind out of me, it knocked the wind out of me. The fact that happened to someone that was so close, murder is bad in any form, but just the closeness of it was just, I could not, and people were, and, I refer to Big B and I, because we have conversations all the time. And one of the first things B said was, what are you going to say about all of this?
Yeah.
And I said, I have no words.
Yeah.
He was like, what? I said, I can't. Like, I can't put, I can't put any of this into, I can't put it into anything. It was the first time between the protests and the murders that we had in Wilmington that I couldn't make context out of all of it because, and I don't know if the proximity of it was because of us being in the midst of this pandemic and we're at home. So it was more sensitive because we didn't have the distractions of work and some of the other things. But it was the first time that I didn't have anything to say. And then my university.
So for those who don't know who Ski is, Ski was one of those stand-up guys. He would literally give you the shirt off his back. And he's went and purchased a lot of different stuff and just helped out people who needed it. He's been in here several times for photo shoots. Mm-hmm. He's darn near family. Mm-hmm. He cracks me up. So he always send me a lot of business. Always try to keep me to come back to go to the club. I was like, dude, I ain't going to the club no more. I'm old. I don't want to do it. Kids are getting out of hand. But he cared from the bottom of his heart for people. And when that happened, it threw a lot of us off. I wouldn't post anything about it for days. It's just because I didn't think it was my place to. I didn't feel right doing it. I didn't want, how some people jump on people's deaths as a way to step their stuff up. I want to make sure that I'm big against that kind of stuff.
I'm always saying that the legacy is the most important thing. I always say, like, right after death, a lot of people congregate, they go to the homes and, whatever. And I always say what's most important is after the death. Sometimes it's almost really easy when a person passes away for everyone to kind of come together. But I think what is more important, and especially healing for the family, is after. I mean, because they're still hurting. And so we need to make sure that we're going to be there to help the family and assist, with the legacy of someone that cared so much. Yeah. And so it was really hard for me. And, I DJ on Facebook Live, and this past Saturday was the first time since I just couldn't do it. I mean, it really took a lot out of me. But between that and what was going on here in Wilmington and what was going on in our country with, watching television, and it was almost like me spending silent moments in my home where I would just turn the TV off and close the blinds, and I just closed my eyes, and I was like, I'm trying to make some sense out of all of this. And I couldn't. And it bothered me because I'm like, I always have a resolve. I always have a way, let me figure this out. And I couldn't figure it out. But after a while, I resorted to the same advice I always give. It's like read. I mean, we got to read, and now we really have to. I feel like the box is open, and we need to take advantage of the fact that that box is open, and we need to continue to press to make ourselves, as far as African Americans, a presence. We really are going to have to prove to, and I hate to use the word prove. It's like I really shouldn't have to prove anything, because I feel like when I say prove, it's like effort. But we're really going to have to stand up, and when I'm saying stand up, I really want us to be more prideful, and I want our allies to understand that we should be respected. I don't want us to have to fight for respect. Yeah. It's difficult. People say it's social. It's not. It's in every arena. Some people think it's economical, that you only get looked down if you're Black and you're poor. And I'm like, well, I don't have a lot of money, but I have enough. And I've been in different arenas. So it doesn't matter if you're poor, if you have money, if you have status. And I can tell you stories of being in a room where I felt like I had to prove myself. Yeah. It's exhausting, and we're tired of it.
Let me ask you a question. So I found out for the first time, I had somebody here in the studio who's a little bit more seasoned than I am, and they said, I have a thing about eye contact. I love looking people in the eye, and she said that was a sign of aggression from how she grew up. She was trained not to look people in the eyes, especially white people. Is that something you grew up with, or is that just something maybe her generation back?
That sounds generational.
Because I was trained to always look people in the eye, because you're paying attention to the conversation.
My father used to always tell me to look people in the eye. He always told me to do that. So I don't know if that's more of a generational thing, or if that's more like something that maybe her family. Was she older than me?
By about 15 years, yeah, maybe 20.
Okay, I can see. Yeah, I know what she's saying.
Okay.
She's pretty much talking about that particular generation. They were kind of taught.
It was a transitional generation.
I mean, it goes back to the whole, notion of Emmett Till. I mean, you don't look at a white person. You don't, you mind your business. You look down, whatever. I think that's probably what they were alluding to. But, if she's 15 years, by the time I was coming up, yeah. My father, I think now we're talking about where civil rights really empower people. My father was one of the ones that said, you make sure you look people in the eye. You say what you mean what you say. And I think that was the start of that in the 80s and 90s. What I always like about the young generation, I love the young generation now. What I like about the young generation, I've said that, and I was like, there was a time back in, 70s, 80s, 90s, we would protest about stuff. And I said, but I'm telling you, Generation X, which is where I'm from, we were, that generation was really like, okay, we need this. So we were very vocal. The millennials come along and they get a little bit more vocal.
Yep.
Generation Z ain't playing with you.
Yep.
We want that statue down.
Yeah. We're
going to come back tomorrow. If it's not down, we're going to snatch it down. So you see these stories, and it's not necessarily here, of other places where you have your young protesters where, they demand something. If they don't get it, they're going to do it. So that's pretty much what I'm saying about our Generation Z, as far as our younger generation of protesters. We need to make sure that the emotion is needed. But we need to make sure we arm them with the right education so that they don't put themselves in harm's way. Not so much physically, but mentally.
Yeah.
I think the best way that you can get a person is out-educate them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you sit and you listen, and like I said, you research, it kind of always like to use that kind of thing with my mother. When I would do something bad sometimes, and I was a bad little kid. I was mischievous. I wasn't bad. I was
Midday Miss was mischievous?
Oh gosh. I was always in something. I always had and my mom would say, she said, don't touch that. And I'd be like, so I was really mischievous. But some of mom, I would get, of course, I would get whippings, but sometimes once I got older, my mother would just look at me and go, okay. And I go, what?
Yeah, because you never know what's coming. If they're gonna get you in your sleep, or
Right.
what's
I'm
going
like,
on?
what?
Yeah.
So am I going to get it tomorrow? Am I going to get it today? And so I said, I kind of use that as like, that's kind of almost how we have to be today.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, you going to do that?
Cool.
All right. I'm going to let you think you're getting away with it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to arm myself.
Yeah.
I'm going to arm myself because I'm going to go look up everything about you. I'm going to look up everything about this issue. I'm going to look up everything that's for it, everything that's against it. And I'm going to come back.
That's kind of like the Fayetteville Walmart scenario. Everybody broke into Walmart. Police department put the stuff on Facebook. All right.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, you know, when you arm yourself with education, it's one of the best ways to get back at people. And a lot of times, some people, when we look at protesting, or when you look at when things are at a social unrest as they are right now, people protest differently. Not everything is physical. Because what we have to understand is not everyone is going to make a poster and stand on the steps of City Hall. People protest differently. I'm one of these protesters that starts reading and writing.
Yeah.
I start making phone calls and asking questions quietly.
Cerebral assassin.
And so then you start seeing things happen and people are like, how did that happen? It's like somebody.
Well, the thing is, you know how to move cogs. You know, again, you can try to move something on the surface of it, but if you can get to the axle or the fulcrum and make the change there, that creates a bigger pivot on the outside. Physics.
And so you have to work that way. We do need the protesters, though. Mm-hmm. We do need those people to make posters. Sure. And we do need people to be vocal. We do need you on your social media.
That's
we do
the surface,
want you.
Yeah.
We do want that. But we do also need those, what I call those silent protesters. And I'm one of those protesters that's the silent one that waits and just watches stuff happen because I'm on the phone and I'm making phone calls, or I'm seeing stuff and I'm calling people or I'm texting them and I go, look this up. Yeah. Look this information up. I'm going to give you this right here. Go read this and then take that way. Because I have to be careful, of course. I'm in radio. Yep. I teach at UNCW.
Jesus.
Look, okay, the elephant's in the room.
I like elephants. With trunk up though, right? Not trunk down?
Yes.
So there's a difference.
Yes. For Delta Sigma Theta, trunks up. Trunks up.
Well, trunk up is also a sign of prosperity.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am a current employee at UNCW. I teach freshman seminar. I'm just going to have to say that what is going on at UNCW, I almost feel like I have to apologize to Wilmington. It is probably one of the most embarrassing things to see happening at my alma mater that I have defended for so many years. I have watched this community talk bad about UNCW, that it was a moat. I don't understand why you went to UNCW. UNCW doesn't care about the community or whatever. And I've had many opportunities. Even I was the chair of the board of directors for the Alumni Association for a number of years to try to change that narrative. And I've had those conversations. You know, I would sit in meetings and I would go, listen, you probably don't know this, but this is the way the Wilmington community sees you. I'm telling you this because we need to change, you know. So it was a great opportunity to be in that seat, to watch some things change.
How did they tackle those conversations?
A lot of times it was interesting that they were shocked. They were like, really? Some people would take it and move on it. Some, like I said.
Did they pull the casual racism? But I have 3 black friends.
One of the worst things that I probably had said to me before was, I see that a lot in the black community, and I can say that to you, Sandra, because you're black, but you're different.
I'm different. How am I different?
I'm like, what? How am I different? Because I'm from Wilmington. I'm from Creekwood, Turnkey, right here, Creekwood North. So I'm like, what? How am I different? I don't understand. Am I different because I got a degree? So is it the people that don't have a degree? Are they less than me or whatever?
I sure hope not, because I only have a GED.
You know, it's like, I don't understand. I would have things like that said. And then I think there was the air of people thinking too that you just came across as the angry Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like sometimes I would send a warning shot and I go, listen, I'm trying to tell you in a nice way. Okay. It's almost like I'm trying to be guard dog here. It's like, here's a whole bunch of people behind me that are angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to hold them off, and I'm going to listen. Look.
Yeah.
This is what needs to be done, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to get to a point where I'm going to get tired, and I'm going to go, all right. And I'm just going to let it go.
Your warning shot.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, do you want one person to sit here and try to explain it to you, and you believe what I'm saying? Or do you want this mob of people to come at you?
Mm-hmm. They want the mob.
Apparently, they want the mob.
Mm-hmm.
So, it really bothers me because I have defended that school. I mean, I'm like, it's just this, it's just that. And what I see coming out as far as some of the conversations with Mike Adams,
mm-hmm.
it's just embarrassing because do I have to call this person a colleague because I teach there? He teaches there too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, what do I say to that? How am I having conversations? Sometimes I'm on Zoom calls with people that are in other places in North Carolina. Even outside of North Carolina, I was on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And this person was from Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned that I teach freshman seminar at UNCW. And they were like, wow, what's going on at UNCW? I was like,
Oh, it's national.
And so I was like,
I was doing a show for somebody else, and David Duchovny came and actually talked about it.
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really difficult. Like I said, as you can tell, I'm walking in a circle.
Yeah.
Fix it.
Yeah.
And people the conversation has come to me and say, Sandra, how do you feel about it? And I said, I have seen things happen at UNCW where staff or faculty behaved in a way and they were gone.
Mm-hmm.
They were let go. I mean, some of these were in the news.
Mm-hmm. So why isn't he?
Fix it.
Yeah.
Fix it.
So what is that? What makes him basically Teflon? Why is he not gone if this is a pattern? Does he have some control on something?
I don't.
Or do you not want to get into this because I don't want to put you in a bad spot? Because we can go to a happy place. I'm cool going to a happy place.
I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna sit it down.
Okay.
I think it's deeper than what we're seeing on the surface.
Yeah.
My hope is that it is not the wrongdoing of the university in any way, that this individual has something on them and they're doing everything to
Epstein
protect.
Island?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm hoping that for the sake of my alma mater, for the sake of my degree.
Yeah.
Fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fix it.
Because if
Today.
they don't, they're going to pull back layers and they will find the dirt. I promise you they will.
Fix it.
Statues came down.
Fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And what did I just say? Generation Z is not playing with you.
Yeah.
They're not playing. And I applaud their efforts. And I applaud the celebrities that we've had to step up in our local area to kind of get in behind us on the fight.
Mm-hmm.
It meant a lot to see people arm themselves and join in a fight for a school that they didn't even attend.
Yeah.
Because the sad thing, like I said, many of us that either attended or are working there, we're kind of like.
But they kind of have to, because we have to affect change at the scholastic level to affect the minds of the next leaders.
Correct.
And if we don't cut the head off of that snake, it's going to infect a lot of people.
Correct. So people say, Sandra, what do you feel? Fix it.
Yep.
It needs to be fixed. There are
Big
many
D
other.
says he's tired of being tired.
Yes, we are tired of being. We are. Yeah. We're tired of being tired, and fix it.
Yeah.
It's fixable.
Yeah.
So do it. It can be done. I've seen things, at the university be fixed. Yeah. This can be fixed.
Small changes add up.
Correct.
Now let's go happy.
Okay.
So you've been core DJ. You've done millions of events, millions of parties. What was the most fun event you've ever done or interview you've ever done, and why? No pressure at all.
Let's see. Well, I would have to say probably I had a couple of moments, I guess, in my career that were like, great.
Break them down, girl. Break them down.
It was like, oh, this is great. Nothing's going to top this. Oh, this is great. Nothing's going to top this. And so it's interesting. Fabulous is doing a versus with Jadakiss on this Monday coming up. And I was one of the first people to interview him way back when. Way back when he was a brand new artist. And so I think about that interview, the opportunity to be able to say, I interviewed him when nobody knew who he was. And so now when you look at him, it's those wow moments. I met Kool Herc, who is the father of hip hop. And I thought nothing could get any better than that, which it probably hasn't. I think that's probably at the top of the list to actually stand there and have a conversation with DJ Kool Herc, take a picture with them. Most of the time you see people like this, they just want to take a picture and walk away. And it was interesting because that's exactly what happened. And this was at a core DJ retreat. I was like, I'm going to take this picture with him and then I just need to go because he's Kool Herc, And so we took the picture and I said, thank you so much. And I was getting ready to walk off and he said, no, young lady, where you going? And I was like, oh, because I'm going, well, you're Kool Herc, Kool Herc, So it was like, he was like, so where you from? And so we had a conversation. And so it was pretty interesting to have that dialogue. But then I met Spinderella. Mm-hmm. And I have to say,
Salt and pepper. Yeah.
That was another moment. It was another moment where I took a picture with someone and I thought it was just, and she was the same way. She was like, where are you from? What? Mm-hmm. And to have that good conversation with her from a female DJ perspective, it was probably one of the best conversations that I had as far as being in the business and being on the female side of radio and music and entertainment. Because it's different. Yeah. It's different from the female side.
I get it. So what makes it different for you?
It's different because, and Big B and I have had these conversations several times. I can walk in a room with Big B. Well, people probably don't know my position at the radio station. I'm the music director. Okay. Big B is the program director. Now, the job of the music director is the person that is just like it sounds. It's like the music that you hear on the radio. He, of course, programs the music and he gets the music. But if I have something that I think we need to add, I'm like, Big B, we need to add that. Or I'm on a phone call and I'm like, have you heard the new such and such? What did you add? Did you add this song? We just had this conversation yesterday. I was like, so what are we playing now? So we have these music conversations. That's what the music director does. So we're kind of almost on an even playing field, but he's the boss. Yeah. Big B's my boss. So many times for core DJs, for conferences and many other things that we go on, we both walk into a room together or we'll be at the House Blues, whatever. Prime example, we're at the House Blues. We were standing side by side. This one artist, he comes up. He literally had a 20-minute conversation with Big B. He walked up. He went straight to the mail. So I just stood there the whole time. He never spoke to me, never said, how you doing? What's your name? Whatever. Had this whole conversation. So Big B, he talked to him. He entertained him. Mm-hmm. He was like, so, and then at the end of it, he handed him a CD. Mm-hmm. And so he said, yeah, I just want you to take a listen, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, well, I'm going to give it to my music director and I'll let her listen and then we'll have a conversation about it. So the guy just looked at me. He was like, oh, and I said, no. Mm-hmm. Just and walk away.
Know your room.
Because you need to learn when you come up to address people in the industry, you don't know just because a person is a female, I'm not an earring. Yeah. I'm not an accessory. So a lot of times women in the business have been touted as being less than, or they don't have positions of power or whatever. So it tends to come off as a male dominated industry. And many times there are females that have felt less than and will not push the envelope, but I'll push it. I'm not the one. Don't do that.
So since you have the ear for the station, right? Are there any local talents that you think are going to be the next big thing?
We have a lot of good local talent. We have, of course, a show called The Local Limelight. And actually, Big B and Mike Lang actually man that show. But I listen to the show because I'm always listening for new music. We've got a lot of local talent that's great. But it doesn't stop with the talent. What I need for my Wilmington local artists to understand is that it goes back to the same thing I said with the protests. Yeah. You can't be hot for a minute and then it die down, and you have to continuously work. And then you also have to understand how to brand yourself, and that you have to understand overnight success could mean 5 to 10 years. That is correct. So it's like, once we kind of get that grounded, those artists that we have, because we have a lot of talent coming out of I'm not talking about North Carolina. I'm saying out of Wilmington, we have a lot of great talent. But I'm fearing that talent is not getting the right resource information that they need to move forward. And, that's something that we need to fix. We need to work on that. The conversation has been had several times about having a conference here.
So what's stopping you?
In Wilmington. Well, Corona is now, but before
we can
that,
do it virtually.
I know we could do a virtual one, but before that, there really was no excuse, Jamie. Yeah, there was no excuse. I think it was more of just continuously talking about it, but never acting on it. Yeah. But we need to act on it. It's something that these cats that we have around here really don't. It's a lot about the business they don't know.
Sure.
And it's important for them to, I think, learn that information so they can grow. But the advice that I would give to any local artist, if they were listening to me now, don't stop. Yeah. Just because you think no one's listening or whatever, don't stop. Work on your brand, work on your product, and stand behind your music 100%. Don't kind of naysay yourself, stand behind it. The also most important thing that I think is advice for young artists is take criticism. Take criticism as a learning. Don't take it as hate. Yeah. Nobody's hating on you. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help you. Many of us have been in the business for a while, so we have an ear. So I'm trying to save you from getting your feelings hurt. Again, I'm being that guard again. I'm going, look, that record right there, that's not.
Well, you understand the marketing and what you can actually do to make money with it.
Correct.
This isn't just, hey, this is a cool song. You're actually trying to treat it as a business.
Right.
And you know what the business is biting on.
So I basically want them to understand the whole picture. Again, it goes back to the same thing I said earlier. Making sure that you understand all of it. You know all of it. Don't just know it's like I'm a hot, artist, I'm a hot rapper. Sometimes we tell artists too later on down the line, you may find out that rapping or singing is not what you should be doing. Yeah. You might find out that you're a better songwriter. Or that a lot of times we tell people, the people that are behind the microphone are the ones that make more money, or the ones that are off the microphone, the ones that you don't see.
It's true. I make more money as a tech.
Those are the ones that are consistently making money. So sometimes, we find that. We also want to encourage artists in branding yourself. Also find multiple streams of income. So you have your product, you have your music, but then what other things do you have? Do you have T-shirts? Do you have lighters with your logo on it? Do you have I just did a story.
Oh, that's funny because you're lit.
Say I'm lit. I have a lighter, with your logo on it. Snoop Dogg just announced on yesterday he's got a wine. Yeah. Look at these big artists that we have that have multiple streams of income. So it's the same thing that you could do as an artist. Right. Make sure that you do that. So yeah, we do have a lot. I stand behind our local artists. For the core, I defend our local artists, play their music or whatever. As a matter of fact, we do something called a Cordy J takeover on IG, and I actually did almost an entire hour of just all of our Wilmington artists. DJ'd that a couple of weeks ago. So we do have a lot of talent coming out of Wilmington.
Sure. Awesome.
Speaking of talent, before we get out of here, I just got to, that's right. Buy your name, own your brand. Big B said that. Before we end, I have not had an opportunity to say this, but I definitely want to say the biggest congratulations to Donnie Williams. Hearing that announcement that he was, it was like, I can't describe here again. It's like I didn't have any words. It was like, and I'm saying this in every sense of the word. I'm not exaggerating or whatever. But when I read that headline that he was announced the chief, I had chills.
So remember, Donnie Williams is the new chief of police in Wilmington, North Carolina.
He is the new chief of police of Wilmington, North Carolina, from Wilmington, North Carolina, which I think when we talk about community policing,
I believe he said he was on the force for 28 years.
He was. Grew up in the same neighborhood I grew up in. Grew up in Creekwood, actually. And is a Wilmington native. Has educated himself and has assisted me on many projects with my youth. We used to do Successful Saturdays, and he would come in and speak for my Successful Saturdays as an officer. It means a lot, Jamie, on a couple of fronts. One, for the fact that he's from Wilmington and he gets it. So if I'm going to have somebody in charge of the police department, why not have somebody that knows this city?
Yeah. And
then,
kids.
and additionally, someone that looks like me.
Yeah.
And that's what, it just gave me chills. I am so excited. It was like, I couldn't even form, and I actually have his personal text number because we always text. I'm like, Donnie, I need you for this thing I'm doing. I'm doing this Mayday and I need your help. What do I need to do? Whatever. So I'm always in contact with him about something it's something I'm brainstorming or whatever. So I send him a text message and I swear I had the backspace out because I couldn't put it in Word. Fine, just say, you know what? Congratulations. Let's work. Yep. Let's work. And sad to see that 8 hours into his job, he had to be confronted with what he had to be confronted with, which again has put Wilmington on the map.
The 3 officers?
Yes.
Yeah. But that's a great thing. I mean, because
I
that
think
means
it's
change.
Amazing.
Because change is starting to happen. The bullshit stops here.
Right.
And you can cuss on here because we're not syndicated.
Right.
But
that's right. I'm so used to being like radio. It's like, I'm so used to being radio. Like, we can cuss.
Yeah, you can do anything you want.
That move proved a lot.
Yeah.
It really proved a lot. And it basically was, it did a couple things. It was like, it informed the debate or the question of not only this police force that we have, but maybe others. Could that have been happening other places and we not know? But it took technology for us to find this out, because had it not been for that particular accident of activating his body cam or his dashboard cam, we would have never known.
Yeah.
That's what to me, that's scary.
Yeah. So, like I would tell everybody, you have a little production studio right here.
Right.
It has sound, it has video, it has recording capabilities, it has editing capabilities. If you want to get the message out, you can. There is no excuse. Find your voice.
Find your voice and be fearless. Stand on whatever you stand on. I mean, if you believe this is what you believe in, this is what you believe on. Stand on it. And I've seen Donnie in many different arenas. I've seen him speak. I've seen him act, and he stands on what he stands on. And I just want to congratulate him. And I basically also want to say Wilmington has no idea the blessing that we have. And I hope they see it with what he was not going to he's not going to tolerate that. Yeah. He basically, with what he had to be confronted with 8 hours into his job, the statement was, it's not going down here. Yeah. That's not what's going to happen. And one of the things that I really have admired about Donnie over the past few years that I've known him is to watch him follow through. You know, he's been to the studio many times to interview, and he has bounced ideas. You know, I'm thinking about doing this. I think this is going to be good or whatever. And he would talk to us about it. And I swear, like a year later, it was in action. His follow through is impeccable. And that's one of the things that I really want to let Wilmington know, that we are in for a treat, having a Wilmingtonian in that high position.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Donnie.
Well, and Sandra, congratulations. You are awesome. Sometimes people forget how awesome they are and all the awesome stuff they do. I've known you for almost, 10 years now? You've always been consistently consistent, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. And I always say check on your strong people, and I do try to be consistent. I always say when I get quiet, I tell people,
Real G's move in silence.
it's like I'm either up to something or you might need to check on me.
Yep.
You know, because check, and I'll put this up sometimes every now and then on Facebook. I'll be like, check on your strong people, because we have so much to pour in to people that sometimes we get stuck. I have my moments because I have students and I have my community. And so sometimes I get stuck. I'll go, I don't have it. I've got to pour, I've got to get in my car. Well, not now, but to get in my car and drive to this university and pour into these students in many diverse ways. Being a Black woman, standing in front of a class of all white at UNCW for the past 3 years. My freshman classes have been all white. And it's like, what am I going to say? And I'm like, I'm going to say what I need to say.
Yeah.
I'm going to get across what needs to be gotten across. It's an opportunity. People always ask me, they go, how do you do that? How could you? I would be completely petrified if I had to teach a classroom of 25 young people and they're all white. And I'm like, it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
I wouldn't look at it. It's not a challenge. Yeah. It is a great time because they're freshmen to actually educate them. There's your opportunity to give them a diversity nugget.
I honestly like being the only spot on the wall. I am very comfortable in that position because A, you learn a lot, and B, it's just, you just watch people, and sooner or later you just blend in. It just takes a while.
And you said something important too. It's like you do learn. I learn from them. I learn from them, and I want them to learn from me as well. And so it's a great opportunity, like I said, with this particular generation, for me to pose the topics, and many of the topics are social issues, and to get those responses from those students, and also to find out what's going on in their lives. Yeah. Because you'll be surprised at the dynamic of the household now, of your typical youth, your typical 17 to 25-year-old. They're coming from way different backgrounds. Sure. And me being an instructor, the many years that I have been an instructor, I've watched different trends. Back from when I first started teaching to now, the dynamic has totally shifted. And what it does is it also changes your social conversation when you're teaching a class like freshman seminar or Southern cultures or critical thinking. So those things, it does kind of change my thinking. But it does give me an opportunity still to stand on what I believe.
That's right.
And it's tough. It's hard. It's very hard. It's very hard. And especially, and like BB said, we're tired. I mean, I grew up in Wilmington. We're tired. Yeah. We are tired. It's like every time an issue comes up, it's like, all right, who did what? It was, this was racially motivated again. It's like, it really was. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, what do we need to do? And we look at these boards and commissions. And one thing I'm going to say before we leave, I've said, educate yourself, put yourself in positions of power. If you don't like the way something is going in Wilmington, get on that board and change it, because your voice is going to be held more accountable on a board where there's minutes and where there are other things that, verse in accountability versus standing from the outside shouting into the window. Yep. Get on the board. Yep. So when I saw things that I wanted to change with the alum, for example, I got on the alum board. Yeah. I wanted to see some things change. So I made it vocal and I made my point. And when my point wasn't made or it wasn't addressed, where do I sign up for the, okay, so, yeah, come by to get on this board.
Yeah.
That's what's getting ready to happen. So that's what we need to do too. So in addition to research and educating yourself, if there's something in this city that you don't agree with, get on that board, get on that committee, or establish your own. Establish your own entity that can fight for whatever you want to do. So
be another Kevin.
Yes.
Get on the board.
Thank you, Kevin, too. I mean, and thank you to our Kevins and our Big B's, our Hollis Briggs, my mentor, Miss Linda Pierce. You know, I learned from these women, Miss Bertha Todd. These were the people that taught me when I was younger, you know, but we have got to step forward and keep, you know, the baton going for these elders that kind of empowered us back in the day. And, you know, I was always like, why are you empowering me? I mean, who am I? What can I do? And that was where I really got a lot of my advice about being the silent protester was from Miss Pierce. Miss Pierce, you know, she's one of those people that, oh yes. She's vocal, but she's a thinker. And so I got a lot from her in learning how to kind of weaponize myself educationally.
Sandra, thank you so much for being here today. I know you got to get back to the station.
Yes.
This time's flown by. This is probably the smoothest interview. I'm sorry, Big B, but I think she did better than you did. And
oh, wow. Wow.
She killed it, man. I mean, you got the right person on this team.
Thank everybody for tuning in and listening. And also thank you for allowing me to actually be able to come and speak. And like I said, it has been hard. It's been very hard for me to internalize, you know, all of this stuff. You know, it hurt more than anything. So it's been really hard for me to be vocal. It was almost one of those things that I had to calm myself down so I could speak rationally about how I felt about, you know, the racism and some of the other things that's going on. So thank you for having me, Jamie.
Problem. So to give you guys a heads up, so I have my friend Demetrius. She's going to come on probably tomorrow. We're going to pre-tape her stuff. I've got a guy coming on Monday who's going to talk about going to school in a segregated time. He went through that. And then I got the confirmation Orlando Jones is going to come on the show.
Oh.
And, but yeah, I'm trying to line up a lot more guests. So if you have anybody who wants to have a great conversation, can talk for an hour, and is not afraid to be real, let me know.
Definitely. Definitely.
All right, guys. I love you. Take care.
Thank you, James.